What is going on, everyone? How are you doing? Today we're gonna go down south and do a much requested video on Columbia, South Carolina. Columbia is the capital and the second largest city in the state of South Carolina, with a population of just over 134,000, and that's as of 2016. They also got about 800,000 in the whole urban area. It is right here, in case you don't know. Columbia is home to the University of South Carolina and the U.S. Army's Fort Jackson, a fort I've never been to. Been to Columbia, but I wasn't in the Army at the time, so I didn't go to Fort Jackson. But a university and a fort in the same place, that doesn't really sound like a good combination. That sounds like two groups of people that are known for heavy drinking and poor decision making. Columbia is a city with some serious history. Like the original building from the University of South Carolina, it's still standing. It opened its doors to students in 1801. It's a long time for a building to be standing there, especially when you know some of the things that have gone on around that building. Columbia was occupied by the Union Army, and when they decided to retreat out of the city a couple months before the end of the war, they torched the place. The guy in charge was General William T. Sherman, and he said that they were just lighting some cotton on fire to cover their retreat and blamed heavy winds to setting the buildings on fire. Nobody believed him because Sherman was a bit of a firebug and had already set Atlanta on fire a year earlier. Columbia has seen growth since 1990. They had a few years that dipped maybe 0.1%, but a majority of those years they've seen growth. It's not a bad place to live, but like every place, it's not for everyone. Let's take a look at some of the reasons you might not want to move there in my top 10 reasons not to move to Columbia, South Carolina. Number 10, bad drivers. Columbia has some of the worst drivers in the state of South Carolina. Weekly, they have reports of fatal or near fatal car accidents. South Carolina drivers are the second worst in the country, and one specific issue is to blame. That's according to a new study by Quote Wizard. Quote Wizard blamed the rise in DUIs for the state's bad ranking. Remember what I said about college kids, soldiers, drinking, and bad decision making? Here's your proof. Just recently, a man was killed in a car crash after hitting a small curb. Then he lost control and was ejected from his car after hitting the retaining wall. Be careful driving here, get some extra insurance on your car and on your life, and try and make it through another workday. Number 9, Hepatitis A Exposure. That's a great way to start off one. You'll have to be extra careful living in Columbia. There is currently a Hepatitis A outbreak. Infections started to rise around November. As a result, there's been 180 cases, with 130 being hospitalized. They had one death, sadly. This is all a result of a fast food worker exposing all the residents to Hepatitis A. Maybe don't eat fast food for a while. Stay at home, have a barbecue. The good news is the city and state officials are on top of this one and reacted in good order according to most of the reports I read. Now, I'm sure if you're one of the people that got the hepatitis, you're screaming at your computer screen right now and getting ready to fire off an angry email at your old pal Briggs. Sorry you got the hep, but it could have been much worse. Number 8, the mentally ill. Columbia is not the place to be mentally ill. I mean, I don't think any place really is, but if you are, it's not good here. I read a report about the amount of people living on the streets in Columbia that suffer from mental disorders. But maybe the streets are a better option. Back in January of this year, a mentally ill patient at a health facility in the city of Columbia was killed due to poorly trained staff. I guess the patient had been out of control, and he was dogpiled by 3 employees who had not properly been trained to assess specific situations, and the patient suffocated to death as a result. That's gotta be the worst way to go. Death by dogpile. That sounds really like a name of a punk band from the 1980s. It also sounds like a great way to die if you're like the night janitor at a college cheerleader camp. Number 7, natural disasters. Something Columbia is no stranger to is natural disasters. The city has experienced hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, and thunderstorms. And this is where someone tells us in the comment section they don't get tornadoes or earthquakes. Stop typing. You do. Start typing that into Google instead. You'll find all you need. On average, the city gets about 50 inches of rain per year. This normally ends up causing some flooding every few years or so. It may be a good idea to get a little extra protection from your homeowners or renters insurance while living here. You don't want to be paying a mortgage on a house you can't live in. That always sucks, trust me. Number 6, obesity and barbecue sauce. South Carolina is one of the most obese states in the country. Columbia is the chubbiest in the state. As you can imagine, this has something to do with food. If you ever go to Columbia, you'll realize the barbecue isn't just a form of cooking, it's a religion. And a quick warning to people that might move here. The barbecue sauce in South Carolina is not your typical brown. It's yellow, and it's called Columbia Gold. Now they have the other normal types of barbecue sauce too, but this one's pretty much widespread in this area. I've talked about this one before in other videos. This sauce is a mixture of yellow mustard, ketchup, and apple cider vinegar. The locals love it. However, it's definitely an acquired taste that a lot of transplants never really find a taste for. Myself, I love it. It's a nice change. I love all forms of barbecue sauce, actually. I always tell my wife if fragrance companies were smart, they'd make a barbecue perfume. That's how my cousin's ex-wife hooked him. She always smells like barbecue, and Krispy Kremes too, so there's that. Number 5, it's a capital city. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I've covered some really bad capital cities, especially recently. Trenton, New Jersey, Jackson, Mississippi. Columbia is nowhere near as bad as these ones, but it does have some problems. Columbia is the capital of South Carolina. This can be a great thing, but it can also have its downsides. You will be living in the center of anything political in the state. This isn't great if you're the more reserved type and like keeping your opinions to yourself. You'll be expected to vote at every single election and maybe even join in on a protest or two. They take their politics very seriously in this capital city. And especially the protests. They get protests too. Protests these days seem to be like a new dance craze. Years ago, the country was swept away by different dance crazes like the Macarena. Remember that, Jim? These days, all that energy goes into protesting. There's a lot of political activity in Columbia. And really, when you're around that stuff all the time, it starts to wear on you, especially if you're one of the people that doesn't feel as passionate as, let's say, your everyday protester. But you got to deal with it all the time. I live in Portland. It goes on here all the frickin' time. And it starts to wear on you. You're just like, another day. You don't even care what they're protesting anymore. It just gets old quick. Number 4, the heat. Something Columbia is known for, other than being the capital of the Palmetto State, is its heat. The state capital gets extremely hot during the summer. The average temperature is about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. However, it's not uncommon to have whole weeks where it's up in the hundreds. This, alongside the high humidity, makes it feel even hotter on the hottest days of the year. It's the South, so this one's kind of a no-brainer. What makes it worse is you're in a state that's known for its amazing beaches, and you're nowhere near them. While the Congaree River runs right through the city and Lake Murray isn't too far away, you won't be able to have a nice day at the beach without having to make a day trip out of it. The nearest beach is Myrtle Beach, which is almost 3 hours away. Of course, it depends on who's driving. If you have someone that drives like an idiot, you could make it there in about 2 hours. I mean, if you don't get pulled over and arrested and they find, all kinds of weird crap in your trunk or something like that. That's not uncommon on the roads in South Carolina. Number 3, the homeless law. It always sucks when a member of the community has become homeless. However, it is something Columbia residents see a lot of. There's about 1,700 homeless individuals in the city of Columbia, South Carolina. About 26% of them are families with children. In an effort to combat the homelessness problem, the city imposed a homeless ban on its downtown area in 2013, since officials feared that this would prevent the city from becoming an economic hotspot. If found homeless in the downtown area, you will be given the options of leave the city, go to jail, or go to a homeless shelter outside the city. This doesn't really seem to be helping the homeless problem at all. Maybe just shuffling it around a bit. Portland tried this back around 2013 or 14 or something like that. I haven't seen any change. I don't know how it worked out. It just kind of faded off into the back page of the news. It's bad enough when you're homeless, but then the cops come by and tell you can't do it here. I mean, that sucks when you're like flying a drone or skateboarding. Those things are something you want to do. Nobody wants to be homeless. Number 2, taxes. When it comes to giving your money to the government, both the city and the state don't seem to be working for the residents in South Carolina and Columbia more specific. For income tax, there's a bracket ranging from 0 taxed for income less than $3,000 to 7% in the highest bracket, which is considered anything over $14,860. That is so low. You won't get off the hook easy for sales tax either. The state sales tax is currently at 6%. However, the city imposes their own 1%, and then in some cases there's a special tax leading up to a combined 8% in some situations. Taxes are really just half the problem. South Carolina is among the top 25 states with the lowest cost of living, and as we all know, when you got low cost of living, it also usually means there's a low average income. By moving here and transferring jobs, you're likely to take it in the pants and get a pay decrease. Unless you're already unemployed, then what are you worried about? The average income here is about $24,000 a year. $24,000. That's the average. Now, I understand there's a lot of people making a whole bunch of money. There's a lot of people making less than $24,000. That's not a good average. That's far lower than the US average. So you might be making less money and paying more taxes. Whew, what a hoot. And number 1, the Gamecocks. One thing that'll be hard to explain to family and friends is that you'll be moving to the land of the Gamecocks. The University of South Carolina is located within the city. Their mascot is, and I'm not joking, Cocky the Gamecock. People will actually say that with a straight face here. Cocky the Gamecock. I have a friend that bought a t-shirt from the university. He doesn't even follow sports, but he loved it so much because it has the logo, it has Cocky the Gamecock, and it says, I love the Cocks. It's a great school with great athletics. It just has a really unfortunate nickname and mascot. This is towards people coming from outside that maybe don't follow sports, and they don't know this little tidbit of information. Anyway, like I said, it's a great school. It's just a really strange name. Gamecocks, I understand it, I get it, but Cocky the Gamecock is a little weird. Alright, so that's my top 10 reasons not to move to Columbia, South Carolina. Columbia is really a nice city. Been there a few times. I enjoyed myself every single time. It's just not for everyone. You know, no place is perfect. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you got some information out of it. Don't forget all the links below. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other. Cocky the Gamecock.